Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Iran's President-elect Ebrahim Raisi says the country's foreign policy will not be limited to the 2015 nuclear deal. Addressing his first news conference, Raisi urged the United States to immediately return to the 2015 nuclear deal and lift all sanctions on Iran. He added that the country's ballistic missile program is not negotiable. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says he is against nuclear weapons, but the country's nuclear program is only for defense. In an interview with HBO, Khan said the United States must make a political settlement before withdrawing from Afghanistan. He also questioned the international community's silence on human rights violations in Indian-occupied Kashmir. On Islamophobia, Khan said there is no connection between Islam and terrorism, but the Muslims are facing consequence of the term Islamic terrorism. Indian troops have martyred 3 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Baramulla district. The youths were targeted during a so-called search operation in Sapori town of the district. The occupying troops have martyred nearly 370 Kashmiris since the revocation of the valley's special status in 2019. Sweden's Prime Minister Stefan Löfven has been ousted after the parliament passed a no-confidence motion against him. Löfven has been given a week to either resign and let the Speaker of the Parliament find a new government or call a snap election. The Prime Minister faced the motion against one of its proposals to the rent reform policy to ease immigration rules in the country. India has reported over 53,000 new COVID-19 cases with more than 1,400 deaths, taking the toll beyond 388,000. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 30 more people lost their lives to the virus, while over 900 tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.86 million lives and infected over 178 million people so far. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Iran's President-elect Ebrahim Raisi says the country's foreign policy will not be limited to the 2015 nuclear deal. Addressing his first news conference, Raisi, Iran's foreign policy priority would be improving ties with Gulf Arab nations. The urge to the United States to immediately return to the 2015 nuclear deal and lift all sanctions on Iran. Raisi said Washington had violated the deal and the European Union had failed to fulfill its commitments. He said the country's ballistic missile program is also not negotiable. Raisi is under U.S. sanctions over his alleged involvement in the extrajudicial killings of thousands of political prisoners in 1988. Prime Minister Imran Khan says he is against nuclear weapons, but Pakistan's nuclear program is only for national defense. In an interview with HBO, Khan said the United States must ensure political settlement before withdrawing from Afghanistan.
He also questioned the international community's silence on human rights violations in Indian-occupied Kashmir. He said Kashmir is an open prison with 800,000 Indian troops who have killed over 100,000 civilians so far. Regarding his advocacy for Islamophobia in the West, Khan said the 1.3 billion Muslim population was targeted after 9/11. Khan said the West coined the term Islamic terrorism after 9/11 as if it is religion that radicalizes people. He said there is no connection between Islam and terrorism. The Prime Minister added that there is a huge communication gap between the Islamic and Western world.
Indian troops have martyred 3 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Baramulla district. The youths were targeted during a so-called search operation in Sapori town of the district. The operation was ongoing till the last reports came in. The occupying troops have martyred nearly 370 Kashmiris since the revocation of the valley's special status in 2019. The 48th organization and leaders have expressed concern over the Indian troops' killing spree and paid tribute to the martyrs. In Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, leaders say they will urge Prime Minister Narendra Modi to restore the valley's status when they meet him on Thursday. The two sides will come across for the first talk since New Delhi revoked the region's special status in 2019. People's Democratic Party leader Mehbooba Mufti says their agenda is the restoration of Kashmiri statehood. A PDP spokesperson said the alliance formed last year will discuss the upcoming talks with Modi in a meeting today. Senior leaders of the National Conference also met over the weekend and backed the decision. Meanwhile, India's Congress leader Chidambaram has also urged the Modi regime to restore the full statehood of Kashmir. He called on the center to resolve the issue politically. Pakistan says it will continue to play a constructive role to make the Afghan peace process successful. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said peace in Afghanistan is a priority for regional states. The Foreign Minister said the world acknowledges Islamabad's role in the international peace and stability. Qureshi said he presented Pakistan's position on the Afghan issue at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. He said the Kashmiris have rejected the illegal Indian revocation of the valley's status. The foreign minister added that Pakistan has effectively highlighted the Kashmir issues at all forums. The Afghan government says its forces have retaken Bangi and Khwajagar districts in Takhar province from the Taliban. In a statement, the defense ministry said the Taliban suffered heavy casualties and fled the districts. The ministry said Abdul and Qarapuarach villages in the province's Tulukan city were also cleared. Earlier, Afghan forces said they regained control of Faryab's Pashtunkot and Dahandara districts. They claim to have killed 42 Taliban fighters during operations in the Balkh and Faryab provinces. Reportedly, the centers of 11 districts in the province have fallen to the Taliban as they advance towards Myanmar city. Meanwhile, the Taliban claim to have captured the Daulatabad and Shulgada districts in the northern Balkh province. At least 21 Palestinians have been injured after Israeli forces attacked an anti-settlement rally in occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent says the occupying troops fired tear gas to disperse the protesters in Nablus city. It added that the 12 protesters were hit by tear gas shells, while 8 others sustained fractures. Moreover, Israeli forces also detained 15 Palestinians from various parts of the West Bank. It comes a day after the Israeli forces attacked Palestinian families in the Sheikh Jarrah of occupied East Jerusalem. Tensions have risen since Israeli court ruled the eviction of Palestinians from their homes in the Sheikh Jarrah in favor of Jewish settlers. Sweden's Prime Minister Stefan Löfven has been ousted after the parliament passed a no-confidence motion against him. Löfven has been given a week to either resign and let the Speaker of the Parliament find a new government or call for a snap election. The Prime Minister faced the motion against one of its proposals to the rent reform policy to ease immigration rules in the country. Löfven failed to secure the support in the Parliament over a plan to ease rent controls for the newly built apartments. He has become the first Swedish head of government to be defeated in a vote of no confidence. A new government or a caretaker regime would only sit until a general election scheduled for September next year. In Armenia, acting Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's civil contract party has won the parliamentary elections. Preliminary results show that the ruling party received 53.92% of the vote from all 2008 polling stations. The Central Election Commission says the Armenia alliance comes second with 21.04%. Meanwhile, I Have the Honor Party is third with 5.23% of the vote. Russian media reported the nationwide turnout at 49.4%. Pashinyan called snap elections after a notorious defeat against Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh war. The United States says it is preparing a new set of sanctions against Russia over the poisoning of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. In an interview, U.S. Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said European allies are being rallied to sanction Russia for using chemicals against its own citizens. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said the United States always likes to create obstacles. She added that the United States is trying to solve the problems of its own non-competitiveness. The United States and the European Union have already imposed sanctions over the alleged poisoning back in March. The latest warning comes just days after U.S. President Joe Biden met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Geneva. The United States says it is looking forward to a positive response on talks from North Korea. This comes after Pyongyang said it needs to be ready for both dialogue and confrontation with Washington.
U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Sung Kim, met his South Korean and Japanese counterparts in Seoul. After the talks, Kim said Washington will also be prepared for either dialogue or confrontation. He said the U.S. will continue to enforce UN Security Council resolutions that impose sanctions on Pyongyang. The envoy reaffirmed the shared commitment to denuclearize the Korean peninsula through diplomacy. Meanwhile, the White House termed North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's remarks an interesting signal. In an interview, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Washington is still waiting for a direct response from Pyongyang on talks.
Qatar's foreign minister has received Saudi Arabia's new ambassador to Doha, Prince Mansour bin Khalid Al Saud. He is the first envoy to be reinstated by the Arab states that had agreed to end a row with Qatar earlier this year. State media said Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani assured the Saudi ambassador of full support to advance the bilateral ties. In January, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and Bahrain had agreed to end a 4-year boycott and restore relations with Doha. Riyadh, however, has taken the lead among the four in re-establishing relations. The Saudi Arabia-led military coalition says downsizing of the U.S. military assets in the kingdom will not affect its defense capabilities. In a press briefing, coalition spokesperson Brigadier General Tulki al-Maliki said Saudi Arabia has the capability to defend itself. Maliki said that they have a strong understanding with their allies about the threat in the region to counter them. Earlier, the United States said it was cutting the number of troops and air defense units deployed to the Middle East. These include Patriot batteries and the anti-missile system THAAD deployed in Saudi Arabia. Myanmar's junta leader has arrived in Moscow to attend a security conference. This is General Min Aung Hlaing's second trip abroad since seizing power in February. The Moscow Conference on International Security is scheduled to be held from June 22nd to the 24th. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has appealed to Myanmar's military to allow aid for the internally displaced people. He backed the bishop's appeal to authorities to respect the religious sites as neutral places of refuge. However, the anti-coup protesters have yet again taken to the streets across the country. According to a rights group, the junta has killed at least 817 people since it seized power on the 1st of February. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. India has reported over 53,000 new COVID-19 cases with more than 1,400 deaths, taking the toll beyond 388,000. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.86 million lives and infected over 178 million people so far. More in this report.
Brazil has recorded over 1,000 deaths from coronavirus and more than 44,000 infections overnight. The country has registered nearly 18 million cases since the pandemic began, with over 501,000 deaths. Indonesia will tighten mobility restrictions in some areas for 2 weeks, starting from Tuesday after a rise in cases. In Australia, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has promised more vaccines for the southwestern New South Wales state, which is fighting to contain its latest outbreak of the highly infectious Delta variant. The country's most populous city, Sydney, is on alert as a cluster in its suburbs grows to 9 cases. Over half the new cases being reported in Portugal's Lisbon region are also of the more infectious Delta variant. Meanwhile, the U.S. has extended a non-essential travel ban to neighboring Canada and Mexico until 21st of July.
In Pakistan, deaths from COVID-19 have surpassed the 22,000 mark, with 30 more fatalities reported overnight. The health ministry says more than 900 people tested positive in the past 24 hours. The country has reported over 949,000 cases and more than 893,000 recoveries so far. The active number of cases stands at 34,000 with a positivity rate of 2.6%. Pakistan is reporting a steady decline in coronavirus cases after the deadly third wave. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Imran Khan says partial lockdown coupled with comprehensive data analysis helped Pakistan contain the virus. Pakistan has strongly condemned the Houthis' attack on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In a statement, a Foreign Office spokesperson called for the immediate cessation of such incidents. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said these attacks harm civilians and violate Riyadh's territorial integrity. He lauded the coalition forces for successfully intercepting the explosive laden drones and destroying them. Moreover, the spokesperson reaffirmed Pakistan's support for Saudi Arabia against any security threat. The European Union has prepared a fourth package of sanctions on 86 individuals and companies in Belarus. The EU Foreign Policy Chief says the curbs will be finalized when the European Council meets in Luxembourg. In a statement, Josep Borrell said the curbs target Belarusian exports to the EU, but did not specify the industries. Borrell stressed that Brussels avoids economic sanctions, but the actions of Minsk left no choice. Furthermore, Finnish Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto says that the restrictions will be used to pressurize Belarus. Haavisto cited rights violations, a crackdown on dissent, and the forced landing of a Ryan airplane to justify the sanctions. Ethiopians are voting in national and regional polls in what the government calls the first free elections. About 37 million people are eligible to vote to pick 547 deputies for the federal parliament. The ruling Prosperity Coalition, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, is the main contender for victory among 46 parties. The government is billing the elections as proof of Abiy's commitment to democracy after decades of authoritative rule. The Prime Minister earlier held a meeting of the National Strategic Command in Addis Ababa to ensure secure polls. Abiy vows to revive Ethiopia's economy hit by conflicts and the COVID-19 pandemic. Asian stocks have dipped after the U.S. Treasury yielded curve flatlined further, with 30-year yields dropping below 2%. Japan's Nikkei led declines with a 3.6% drop, while MSCI's broadcast index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan fell 1.4%. Australia's ASX 200 shed nearly 2%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng index dropped over 1.3%. China has broadened a crackdown on its massive cryptocurrency mining industry with a ban on mines in the key Sichuan province. As a result of the Chinese crackdown, the values of major cryptocurrencies fell significantly. Authorities in Sichuan ordered the closure of 26 mines last week and stopped supplying electricity to all. Bitcoin fell below $32,300 for the first time since the 8th of June. Smaller rival Ether dropped below $2,000 for the first time since the 23rd of May before trading 10% lower. China accounts for more than 50% of global Bitcoin production and 80% of the global trade. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.